Welcome to the Spark Good podcast, your weekly dose of inspiration, strategies, and stories that will ignite your passion for making a difference through your business. I'm your host, Stephanie Malon-Rufi, and together we will dive into the world of entrepreneurship and small business and explore how we can harness its power to spark good and change how we do business. I believe in the incredible potential that business can have in making a positive social impact, and I want to help you discover how you can better align your business goals with meaningful causes and contribute to a better world. Plus, you'll learn how to nurture your own well-being, change traditional rules that might be holding you back, and thrive in your role as a social business owner. All right, let's dive in. Hello, and thank you so much for coming back today and joining me. This is your host, Stephanie Malon-Rufi, and today is the 4th episode of the Spark Good podcast. Again, so happy to have you. Really excited to talk about today's topic, which is all about your zone of genius and working in your zone of genius and figuring out your zone of genius and understanding why it's important. And there's a number of benefits with figuring this out. The biggest of which is that when you're able to really work as much as you can in your zone of genius, it allows you to run your business with so much more ease and actually helps you to be more sustainable. So we're going to get more into that. But first, I'm going to just get into what is the zone of genius, some ways to discover yours, and I have 3 exercises that I'm going to talk you through. And then again, going back to those benefits and uses for once you know this, kind of the so what. So let's begin with defining zone of genius. So quite simply, your zone of genius is what's most effortless for you. I'm going to say that one more time. I really want you to think about that. Your zone of genius is what's most effortless for you. Now, this concept comes from a book called The Big Leap by Gay Hendricks. This is a pretty widely read book. I feel like especially with entrepreneurs tends to be a lot of the people I know who read this book. And it is one that I do recommend if this is something that's of interest to you. We're going to be talking about this zone of genius concept, but Gay addresses a lot of other topics in the book, including hitting your upper limit, which is not a conversation we're going to have today, but an important one for entrepreneurs to really dive into because it talks about how we naturally retract ourselves. We naturally don't play as big when we get to a certain point and what that upper limit is and how can we explore that and move past it. Again, not going to talk any more about that. Want to talk about zone of genius. And in the book, The Big Leap, Gay talks about the things we do in our lives, and he has 4 different categories. And so ultimately what you want to do is discover and live as much as you possibly can in your zone of genius. That's one of the categories. That's where you really thrive. And Hendricks himself suggests that we gain more fulfillment and happiness when we spend more time on activities in this zone of genius. So first, I'm going to walk through these 4 categories, and they're fairly straightforward, as you will see. The first one is zone of incompetence. So as it sounds, these are things you're not very good at. You might even get feedback from others saying you're not very good at this. probably not things that you enjoy doing either. So zone of incompetence, as you can probably guess, not a place you want to spend a lot of time. Then the next one is zone of competence. So that's where you can do something, you're competent, you're able to do it, but it's not necessarily more exceptional than somebody else. Other people can do the same thing as well as you. Some might even do it better, but it's something you are able to do. The third one is zone of excellence. So these are activities that you do get a lot of positive feedback about. Again, it can be in your work, it can be in your personal life. So these are things that you do pretty well. In fact, might be better than a lot of other people. And again, it might be something that you enjoy. Then the last one is that zone of genius. So the question is, what is your genius? What do you love most to do that when you do it, the time just flies by? So I love thinking about that. Can you think about the time that you were doing, what you were engaging with the last time where time just flew by? So think about that. A few more points I want to make about this zone of genius. It's the whole concept is where you're actually really leaning into a lot of your natural abilities, things that are innate for you. Zone of genius tends to be things that are more innate versus learned. This isn't to say you can't learn things. You can't learn things and be excellent on them. Absolutely. But a lot of times the zone of genius, like at the core of it, really, it's so unique and it's something that's natural to you. When you're in the zone of genius, another way to think about it, right? We talked about time flying by, is you're in the flow. So that's I love the term flow. Things are moving at a really lovely pace, right? Again, sometimes when we do things, it just flows. It feels good. It's exciting, right? We're not getting friction. We're not having resistance. So think about being in that state of flow. Oftentimes when you're a zone of genius, there is unlimited inspiration. Think about those times where, you just feel so inspired. It's like it's creativity coming through and just inspiration and lots of ideas and a lot of excitement around that. And the last piece I want to say about this is in your zone of genius, if you're truly able to relax and begin to do that work, you will notice that you are also able to create almost instantaneously. It doesn't take you too much thought. It goes back to that concept of effortlessness and ease. And what I love about this concept too is we can all excel in our unique areas, in our zones of genius, and work doesn't have to be such a drudgery. We don't have to bury ourselves under our work 16 hours a day, right? When we are doing the work almost that we were meant to be doing, then it doesn't have to be hard. It can be easy and fun. That's what makes life interesting and enjoyable, right? So as we, on this podcast, one of the topics I talk a lot about is changing how we're doing business, that we're not embracing the traditional business ways. A lot of those that with the Industrial Revolution created these environments of work to the bone, this ongoing cycle of just endless work that's not enjoyable. And what I love about the zone of genius is if this is something that you are able to bring into your business and the work that you're doing, it's going to make your business so much more enjoyable, and you're going to be able to run your business. It's not going to be running you. All right. So hopefully you're excited. Maybe you have already explored the concept of zone of genius. Maybe you've thought about it a little bit differently already today. And what I'm going to share with you next, I'm really excited. I have 3 exercises, and these exercises can help you to define your zone of genius or perhaps refine it. Something that I notice even for myself is it's always worth checking in. Am I operating in my zone of genius, right? Am I defining it the right way? Recognizing that you're spending as much time as you can in that line of work. So whether you know what your zone of genius is or not, I think you will find these exercises to be helpful. And the first one is pretty much a set of questions. So I'm going to walk through these questions. You might want to pause this. You might want to grab a pen and paper and write these down. But these questions are a combination of ones that Gay poses in the book, and there are some I've developed on my own, working with clients when we get into this topic. And the other recommendation I have when you do this is if you're able to have your calendar and or your to-do list from the past few weeks near you, it's great as a reference point when you're answering some of these questions, because some of the questions you kind of have a feeling about, but sometimes it's also good to be able to fact check. Did I really spend, 10 hours writing this proposal, or was it 2 hours? It just seemed like longer because it was sort of drudgery for me, right? But when we're able to kind of fact check, that helps us, also gives us some perspective. So I'm going to go through the questions. I'm just going to say them, and I want you to think about these. First of all, what work do you do that doesn't seem like work? I should note also that I'm going to approach these from the perspective of working in your business. However, there's nothing to say you can't look in your personal, non-business time as well. Absolutely. We have zones of genius in everything that we do. But I specifically will be speaking to working in your business. All right, second question. In your work, what produces the highest ratio of abundance and satisfaction to the amount of time spent? Next question. What is your unique ability? What topics naturally excite you? What feels easy to you, but others are amazed because it feels overwhelming to them? What do people often compliment you on? What do people often come to you for? What do you teach others to do? When do you feel most alive? What energizes you? And the last question, what do you most love to do? That you love it so much you can do it for long periods of time without getting tired or bored. Okay, so answering these questions can help you drill down to sort of that core work that you enjoy, doesn't feel like drudgery to do, right? You can start to define that zone of genius for yourself. Now, my second exercise is not from Gay Hendricks' book. It's actually from another book, which is another fabulous book that I highly recommend, and it's called Do Less by Kate Northrup. The byline is a revolutionary approach to time and energy management for ambitious women. So an exercise she has in here, it is not an exercise she presents with the big leap, but it is an exercise that I think complements this topic really well. And it's something I thought would be another enhancement to this conversation to share. So she has an exercise and it's called, I think she calls it the vital few. That's what I call it. But I believe that's how she talks about it as well. And what I love about this exercise, it not only helps you identify those activities that you're good at and enjoy, but it also helps you to see those that connect to you achieving your business goals. Okay, so I'll explain how this works. There's actually 2 parts to the exercise. In the first part, I'm going to read her directions verbatim, which is on page 86 in the book Do Less. So step 1, you're going to draw a line lengthwise down the center of a piece of paper. Step 2, on the left side, you're going to write down all the activities and tasks that you do at work. Be as specific as possible. So obviously, if you're doing this exercise, this is going to take some time. So maybe just think about the directions right now. Now, step number 3, on the right side, write down your biggest career wins to date. I use this a little bit more broadly. It doesn't be career. It can be career wins. It could be business wins. And again, we're not talking, I hit 6 figures in sales. It doesn't have to be, it can be landing, my first client with my VIP high ticket offer, for example. Okay, whatever works for you, or sold out of inventory of my first product. Lots of different wins, but just so you know, it doesn't have to be sort of the big jackpot one. So list a lot of the wins. Now, step 4 is you're going to draw a line connecting each of those biggest wins to the activity or task most responsible for it happening. Step 5, you're going to circle, underline, or highlight the activities on the left side of your paper that were responsible for the big wins. These are what she calls the vital few. So what I love about this is that connection between some of the work and the results that we get, because the more those can line up, right? If your zone of genius does not correlate at all to anything that you're doing in your business, that would be hard to find, but it could be possible. If that is the case, it's going to be a lot harder to grow your business with the current offers if that's your zone of genius. The more that those can align, the better. So that's what I love, that what she calls the vital few, she's also connecting those to outcomes and results. Now, she goes through this exercise, and then she also talks about how there's ongoing assessment that you can do. So I'm going to talk about that. And this is in the same chapter in her book, and it's on page 88. And she calls this step, it's ongoing. So to start to spend more and more of your time on your vital few, and less of your time on things that don't fall into that, right? I mean, that's your goal, is to shift. Similarly, how Gay Hendricks talks about shifting as much as you can of your time to work in that zone of genius. In fact, he suggests working 90% of your time in your zone of genius, which is a pretty high goal. I don't know if I personally know anyone who does that, but I love that it's there, because that's what you want to shoot for. Okay. So something that you can do if under this vital few exercise is, at the end of a month, or at the end of a day of a month, let's say, you can just have a finite piece of time. You can write down all the activities you did that day. And then you're going to highlight those that fall in the vital few category, and woohoo, that's exciting. The ones that don't fall into that, ask yourself, do I love doing this? Okay, do I love it? Yes, okay, then keep it because you do enjoy it. That's what Kate Northrup recommends, and I concur. If there are things that you really enjoy, again, if it's as long as it's not a ginormous time suck, then let's keep it. But if you don't enjoy it, then you need to assess, does this need to be done at all? And if not, then stop doing it. If you do need to keep doing it, then think about, is there someone else who could help me do this? Someone else who could do this for me? We might not always be in a position to hire someone to do that. However, it's still good to assess, okay, when I am able to hire someone, even if it's a part-time contract position, this is the first thing I want to get off my plate, right? And that's, as a solo business owner, that's super important to think about and know that when you have that opportunity, where your biggest need is. So this is a way that you can do some periodic checking with your schedule. And I love her approach of, do I love this? Yes or no? If I don't, do I need to do it? And if I do, who can help me do it? And if not right now, putting a plan to have that happen soon. Okay, so that's the vital few exercise. The last one, this third one, is an energy audit. And I'm not talking about the energy in your house. I'm talking about your own personal energy in your body. Now, I have been known to have my clients do a time study or a time audit. And I would say that in the past, most recently, I do have started adding energy to that so that people are not only tracking how they use their time, but also their energy levels at the time. And I will say the reason we often do this is when I have clients who are feeling burnt out, overwhelmed, busy schedules, too much to do, not enough time. If we take the time to really analyze it and look at it, we can find time leaks. We can figure out things that actually don't even need to be happening. There are ways that we can change our schedule right away, and it's really amazing. But you have to put in, I recommend at least 2 weeks of tracking your time and then taking the time to review it. But that is what happens with an energy study. So this is a recommendation where you can just purely do an energy study. And although it's typically going to be attached to time on your calendar, but how you can do this is, first of all, keep a running track on your calendar, or if you have a planner, however you keep track of your time, but more details about what you're doing. And again, we can focus on just related to your business or work. So for at least a solid 2 weeks, and if you're like traveling or something weird, maybe do 3 weeks, but you're going to write down everything you're doing. And then you're going to get 2 highlighters, 2 colored pencils, or what have you. We're going to say red and green for these purposes. And so you're only going to have 2 colors, and you're going to go through hour by hour for all the time, the energy that you were tracking for that period, and ask, did this activity give me energy or drain my energy? And it's either going to be colored red if it was a drain, and green if it gave you energy, or I like to say felt energized. And so what you want to do then, I love this because it gives you a really quick, clear visual. You can pretty quickly see, green and red, and then really look at what are the activities, what is similar between the activities in green and what's similar between the activities in red. And then what you can do is look at those red blocks, very similar to the vital few exercise. Look at what they are. those activities? Are they something you can eliminate? Are they something you can outsource or outsource soon? And sometimes if you can't do either, it's something you have to do, at least for now. Think about a way potentially that you can make it better. So I will give you an example of this, which is when I have to do my own, let's say, financial bookkeeping, financial review for my business. And I can do it. It's not my favorite, but it's also important that I do it. I will pair it with maybe a fancy coffee drink, something that's, I am getting more into tea, maybe a kind of a new tea flavor. I will try to pair that activity with something to make it a little bit more enjoyable. Another example might be driving, right? You might have drive time on your calendar, whether it's for business or not, and that might be draining for you. Not enjoyable. What could you do to maybe enter so one thing is you could actually bring some energy into the car, right? With music. So change that experience. Or you, again, listening to podcasts, listening to books. How can you feed your brain and your mind while you're having to drive? So those are just some examples of how you can make some activities that you can't eliminate, can't outsource right now, how to make them at least more enjoyable. All right. And again, an energy audit, something you can do quarterly. I realistically, maybe at least once a year. I know I try to do a time study at least once a year because that always shifts, and it's great just to get a handle and reset on how am I spending my time? How am I spending my energy? And the idea, of course, in this scenario for any of these things, when you're auditing, right, how much time are you spending in your zone of genius, that hopefully that's increasing. Because as I mentioned earlier, Gay said the goal is to really work 90% of your time in your zone of genius. And if you do, you will be able to achieve more in less time because you are performing better. So as we're wrapping up here, a reminder about these benefits. And I'm going to say that again. When you are working in your zone of genius more of the time, you will be able to achieve far more in less time because you will perform better. You will be in your zone of genius. Okay, so all these different exercises, hopefully this is exciting to you and you're going to try at least one of them, maybe two, maybe three. And I would love to hear how that goes or how the experience was for you. And in doing these exercises, what I love about it also, it's going to help you plan your time better. There's just no doubt the awareness that you are gaining and about yourself and your time and your activities, it's just going to help you plan your future time better. It's going to help you make better decisions where to focus your time and energy. When you are in a position to start adding to your team, to start growing, you're going to have a pretty good sense of what the priority roles, the priority activities are that you need help with. You're going to be living more in alignment, your business, your passions, what you love, there's going to be much better aligned. And ultimately, you're going to be able to work more sustainably, more easily, and effortlessly. So I want to thank you for joining today. I hope this has been informative, maybe inspiring. I hope it's made you at least think about where you are operating currently, what your zone of genius is. I really appreciate you for joining today, staying to the end. And this quote, I feel like, does a great job of wrapping up our episode today. And it is from the book Emergent Strategy, which is by Adrienne Marie Brown. Another book I highly recommend. And in speaking to this idea of doing what we love, being able to do it effortlessly, this is a quote from that book. What is easy is sustainable. Birds coast when they can. Thank you for listening to this episode of the Spark Good podcast. If you haven't yet, please subscribe or follow to the podcast and leave a rating and review so more people can listen and find us. Also, let's connect. You can head over to my website at www.sparkgood.net, where you can subscribe to my mail list and set up a time for us to have a virtual coffee chat. Thank you for joining.